The last item on the agenda tonight is 4.4. It's a recommendation report from Ward 1, official plan amendment and rezoning applications to permit a 9-story condominium apartment building with 35 units and 1 level of underground parking, 55 Port Street East, south side of Port Street East, east of Helene Street, south. The owner is, I don't think it's Brown Maple, but Investments Limited, file OZ 18007 Ward 1, Bill 139, and the recommendation is that, notwithstanding subsequent to the public meeting, changes to the application have been proposed. Council considers that these changes do not require further notice, and therefore, pursuant to the provisions of subsection 3417 of the Planning Act, any further notice regarding the proposed amendment is hereby waived. And 2, that the application under file OZ 18-007 Ward 1 Brown Maple Investments, 55 Port Street East, to amend Mississauga official plan to residential high density, to change the zoning to RA2 exception apartments, to permit a 9-story condominium building with 35 units and 1 level of underground parking, be approved subject to the conditions referenced in the staff report dated August 23, 2019 from the Commissioner of Planning and Building. 3, that the applicant agree to satisfy all the requirements of the city and any other external agency concerned with the development. 4, that the decision of council for approval for the rezoning application be considered null and void and a new development application be required unless the zoning bylaw is passed within 18 months of the council decision. And 5, notwithstanding subsection 45(1)(3) of the Planning Act, subsequent to council approval of the development application, the applicant shall apply for a minor variance application provided that the height and the FSI shall not increase. And there's a staff presentation. I'm assuming everybody else here that's left is on this application, so we'll want to hear that. And welcome, sir, and by all means, carry on.
Good evening, members of the committee and Madam Mayor. My name is David Farrow, and I'm a planner in the Planning and Building Department. And today I'll be presenting to you the staff recommendation report for 55 Port Street East, file OZ 18007. So the property is located where the red dot is, and it's in the southern portion of the city in the Port Credit Community Node. Getting into the smaller context, so the subject lands are outlined in the red box, and it's located in the southwest of the Lakeshore Road and Huron, Ontario intersection. Just north on Huron, Ontario, we have the Port Credit Go station adjacent to the railway corridor. To the west of the subject lands, we have the Marina lands, the Credit River, the Port Credit Village, and the recently approved Brightwater development. To the south, we have the Waterfront Trail and Lake Ontario. To the east, we have 65 Port Street East, which is a 6-story apartment building known as the Regatta and St. Lawrence Park. And to the north, we have another 6-story apartment building. So the subject site currently has a 3.5-story structure and has surface parking lot currently facing Port Street East. Going through the planning instruments, so the property is located in the Port Credit Community Node character area. It's designated mixed use, which allows a combination of residential and commercial, and it is subject to the Port Credit Local Area Plan. And within that Port Credit Local Area Plan, the community node is divided into precincts, and the property is located within the Harbor Mixed Use Precinct. In addition, there is a height schedule within the local area plan that applies to the entirety of the community node, and that permits a maximum height of 6 stories for the subject site. Property is currently zoned RA233, which allows 20 dwelling units, an FSI max of 2.5, 1,400 square meters of GFA, and a 6-story max height. So getting into the proposal, the applicant's proposal is to permit a 9-story apartment building containing 35 units. An official plan amendment is required from mixed use to residential high density, and also a zoning bylaw amendment is required. Here's a concept of the proposal, just to highlight a few features. The access is located on the northeast corner of the site. The applicant is proposing a 4.7 meter setback to the 5-story podium portion, which is outlined in where my mouse is here today, and also 9 meters to the tower portion, which is highlighted by my mouse here. In addition, there is a 3-story podium that wraps around the western facade of the building and runs the length of the property. The outdoor amenity space is located within the southern portion of the site, and access to the lobby is located within this general area here. Here is a rendering of the proposed 9-story building using Google SketchUp from different viewpoints. So the required official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments pretty much takes the property from this 6-story as of right permission to the 9-story proposal. So we're going from left to right here. A community meeting was held on February 11th, 2019, and public meetings were held at City Hall on March 18th and April 15th of this year. General comments that we received from the community related to concerns with the increase in height, density, traffic, and views. So getting into the evaluation, so why are we here? The Planning Act allows property owners to submit development applications to municipalities, and decisions on those development applications are required to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. An evaluation was also done with respect to the Mississauga official plan, and the document in itself contains many general policies that encourage more efficient development within intensification areas, such as the Port Credit Community Node. But the crux of the evaluation will be held against the Port Credit Local Area Plan, which is a document in Mississauga official plan and was adopted by Council in 2014. So there's two facets to evaluate this proposal on. One is density and the other is built form and height. So just to touch on density, the Port Credit Local Area Plan identifies the node to have varying densities in order to be transit supportive. And the harbor mixed use area is identified as an area that will have potential for intensification. So when reviewing the increase in FSI, staff are the opinion that it fits within the Mississauga official plan hierarchy and also within the local area plan. So moving on to the second facet, which is the built form and height. As mentioned, the local area plan has a height limit schedule that prescribes a height max of 6 stories for the site. In addition, the local area plan also anticipates applications for height and includes the following criteria that must be considered when evaluating the height. And I'll go through each individual criteria in the next few slides. So the first criteria is the achievement of the overall intent, goals, and objectives of this plan. So the proposal meets general intensification and built form policies outlined in Mississauga official plan by providing additional housing units next to significant higher order transit and locating close to existing city infrastructure. The second criteria is appropriate site size and configuration, and the Port Credit Built Form Guidelines offers direction on how to achieve that, and that is the 45-degree angular plane test. When the building was reduced from 10 stories to 9 stories, it rendered the building to fit within this test, and you can see in the right image there that it fits within the 45-degree angular plane test. And again, the intent is to ensure that the building does not overwhelm its site and the streetscape. The following two criteria, I've grouped them together because they can be evaluated very similarly. The first one is appropriate built form that is compatible with the immediate context and planned character of the area. And the second is appropriate transition to adjacent land uses and buildings, including built form design that will maximize sky views and minimize visual impact, overall massing, shadow, and overlook. So there's two themes when evaluating the proposal against these two criteria, and one is the building at the district level, and the other is the building at its impacts on the surrounding properties. So when evaluating the building at the district level, the local area plan contains lots of verbiage and stresses the importance of maintaining the existing and planned character of the area. So here's an image of the proposal within the existing skyline of Port Credit Community Node. Here's a map that shows the existing heights in white. You can see a range between 21, 14, and 6. The 6 to 10 red figure is the approved no-frill site, and I'll go further to offer that the lands within the height schedule located north of Port Street and south of Lakeshore Road also enjoy a height limit of 6 to 10 stories. And in addition to that, you can see on the marina lands a snippet from the height schedule that includes the approved heights that were approved by council as a result of the Inspiration Port Credit exercise. So you can see the height schedule today allows for 3 to 10 stories along Port Street and then 22 closer to the south. Here is a rendering of the 9-story building on the right of the image, and you can see the marina lands modeled to the approved heights on the left. And you can gather that the existing and planned heights that's anticipated in the local area plan creates this range, and staff feel that the 9-story height fits within this range. Here is another image looking south towards Lake Ontario, and the marina lands are located on the right side of the image. So getting into the second theme of the 2 criteria, analyzing the building against the surrounding properties, and the next few slides will go into certain design elements that have been implemented that render the building to have appropriate transition to the surrounding properties. So a 5-story podium has been implemented as part of the front facade of the building. As mentioned earlier, it's set back further from the street than what is currently permitted. So the left side shows the podium respecting and relating to the adjacent building at 65 Port Street, and the right image shows the streetscape with the podium. The proposal incorporates setbacks to the front and rear property lines that improve massing impacts at both those property lines. So in essence, the setbacks push the massing away from each property line. On the left, you can see the podium and tower portion along Port Street. That's at a setback larger than what is allowed and in the as-of-right 6-story permission. This shows the rear condition. Again, the setback to the tower portion is at a greater distance than what is allowed at the 6-story permission. The building has been designed to improve view corridors to the lake than what is permitted as of right. So the following images have been provided by the applicant. The black line indicates the, again, as of right 6-story permission, and then the 9-story building is faded out in white. So on the left, you have a view from 70 Port Street. On the right is a view from 80 Port Street. Moving on the left is a view from 65 Port Street, and on the right is a view from the Helene Street, City of Mississauga-owned right-of-way. And the last criteria that has to be considered is the measures to limit the amount of additional vehicular traffic. And a traffic study has been conducted, and while there will be traffic associated with a building going on site, the increase as part of this proposal is small relative to the as-of-right permission. So in conclusion, staff can support the subject applications for the following reasons: a building design that meets the applicable criteria as outlined. The design of the building will add to the Port Credit skyline. Additional density represents a minimal increase than what is permitted. The site is well serviced by transit and community infrastructure and presents housing choice for those seeking options. The proposal is consistent with the PPS and the growth plan and meets the general objectives and intent of Mississauga Fiscal Plan. And staff recommend that committee approve the current proposal. That ends my presentation.
Okay, thanks very much, David. Very thorough report. Appreciate it. Any comments around committee before we go to the public? Councillor Parrish?
I just had a question of the presenter. David? When you were showing those black lines at the end on what the developer can do as of right with 6 stories, is the implication that they would build bulkier buildings and more units squashed down into 6 stories?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the as-of-right zoning allows them to build a bulkier building. They would take advantage of the full frontage where they've demonstrated they can build a slender building and improve views.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before we go to the public? No? All right, we do have a list of speakers. The first one this evening, it's a pair of people, Carla Fink and Julia Fairwell, residents. I assume you're working together. Good stuff. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Crombie, members of City Council, Planner David Farrow, and the Planning Committee of the City of Mississauga. My name is Carla Fink, and my friend, neighbor, and colleague is Julia Fairwell. We live at 70 Port Street East, directly across the street from 55 Port Street East. In April 2018, we were informed that a proposal was made by Brown Maple Investments Limited and FRAM to build a 10-story, 35-unit luxury condo at 55 Port Street East. A group of us followed the advice of our community leaders to voice our shared opposition. Many residents expressed a commitment to support the official plan, which was developed and financed with our tax dollars. We were dismayed that this proposal disregarded the mandated zoning and height requirements of the official plan, which stipulated 6 stories, stepping down to 3 stories on the waterfront. Opposition was mounted by like-minded neighbors who gave their input, signed petitions, and encouraged us to present their concerns at local and City Hall meetings. It is noted in the report of September 16, 2019, that some meetings regarding 55 Port Street East had approximately 100 people. Yet it was our perception that there were far more than 100 people who attended the community meeting on March 18, 2019, as Clark Hall had standing room only all around the room. The majority of speakers at this meeting wanted the height restriction of 6 floors to be maintained. We are disillusioned. Our perception that we could affect change has been shaken. Making a token concession to the developer of allowing 9 stories instead of 10 is by no means a satisfactory compromise for the Port Street community and, in fact, for all who enjoy the lake view. We refer to 4.4 from the report. The increased permitted height from 6 stories to 9 stories allows for a building design that provides enhanced views to the lake and minimizes impacts on adjacent properties. This statement is blatantly untrue. Several residents in specific units of neighboring buildings, 80, 70, 65, and 50 Port Street East, will have their lake and sky views dramatically reduced by the construction of 9 stories. In reference to 4.4, the increase in permitted height to 9 stories fits within the range of heights existed and planned in the Harbor mixed-use precinct in the Port Credit Node is also inaccurate. The proposed building of 9 stories does not fit within the range of existing heights. We want it noted that we hope to maintain symmetry regarding height restrictions in our immediate neighborhood of 80, 70, 65, and 50 Port Street East. The future marina development adjacent to 50 Port Street is to be a height of 2 to 3 stories. It is only 1 block west of Elizabeth Street that higher buildings are being proposed but not yet approved. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to express our opposition to the revised 9-story condo at 55 Port Street East. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Our next speaker is Jonathan Giggs. Welcome, Jonathan. Good to see you.
My mother bought an abandoned house on Helene Street South in 1979, and from the front door, we've been able to see the 55 Port Street East for over 40 years. In fact, we were there before the current building was constructed, and I still think of it as C&C Yachts. I attended the community meeting on February 11th, and I've watched the 2 meetings at PDC on stream, and I've also read the recommendation report from your planning staff. It seemed that the opposition that we just heard now is what you hear at about every development. I think it would be on every PDC bingo card that you could ever provide. Too much height, too much traffic, too dense. Yet we heard from the planning staff how this development actually effectively addresses all those issues. It seems that some of the residents' opposition was almost against any type of development as opposed to this particular development. And as we know, the developer has a right to build something at 6 stories. That might not be quite as nice as what he's proposing at 9 stories. So from my point of view, then I have to evaluate, is the 6 to 9-story building, which is better for the community? From my point of view, I'm blocked from seeing the view from a 1-story building. So 6 or 9 really doesn't make that much difference. It's interesting that the speakers before you quoted the same parts of the recommendation report that I was going to quote, because I think that they actually speak in favor of the 9-story development. That the increase in permitted height from 6 to 9 stories allows for a building design that provides enhanced views to the lake, minimizing impacts on adjacent properties and the streetscape, and fits within the range of heights existing. The applicant has submitted renderings that show different viewpoints, and we saw some of them. They've done a shadow study, and there seems to be the shadow study seems to be satisfactory to your professional staff as well. So in a conclusion then, I would say that I support and agree with the recommendation report that was provided to you by your professional planning staff. And I think that the developer and the architect have really gone to great lengths to try to satisfy this opposition. We see that there's been the street level experience has been very carefully detailed. We see that the views to the lakes have been enhanced, the park behind it and the trailway. These are all things that have been considered by the architect, but unfortunately some people have only heard how high the building is. And I think that we really have a great opportunity to have a beautiful building built in Port Credit. And for that reason, I hope in your wisdom that you will support this development application.
Okay, thanks very much, Jonathan. Okay, our next speaker is Fred Serafaro. I hope I'm saying it correctly, from the Fram Building Group. Okay, welcome, Fred.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and the members of the committee. If you allow me, I would hold my comments till the end. If you will just allow me 1 minute at the end, perhaps to maybe wrap up. I think there's a lot of other speakers that want to take my place now.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
If you just step aside for a bit, and then I don't have anybody else on the list, so if you want to form some kind of a line to come forward and just give us your name and address and tell us what you want us to know about this application.
Good evening. My name is Eleanor Chestnut, and I live at 65 Port Street East. Before I start discussing what I came up to discuss, I don't understand why we can have a beautiful 9-story building or a squished 6-story building. I think we could have a beautiful 6-story building that would complement all the buildings that are currently there. So if we would just maybe change our way of describing it. Thank you. Now, what I want to discuss is, I don't know if you saw the Globe and Mail article on October 5th. And what it says are 3 billion birds are missing in the last 50 years. Well, 50 years isn't one of our lifetime, and 3 billion birds are missing, and the majority of the reason why they're missing is because of glass buildings and less grass, wild grasses. So you're going to be asked to approve a 9-story glass building that's in the migratory flyway. So all the birds that are migrating up from the south pass through this area. And with 6 stories, it's bad enough anyways, but if it wasn't glass, if it complemented the buildings we have now, which are brick, it would be way better for our birds. To make it closer to home, 2 out of 10 Blue Jays are missing. 4 out of 10 Baltimore Orioles are missing. 92 million red-winged blackbirds are missing. 7 of 10 meadowlarks, and 600 million warblers. Now you think, when did I see a warbler last? We haven't seen warblers in a while because 600 million are missing. I think when you're asked to approve the building tonight, the glass building, I think if you think about it, what you could do for the environment. If each one of us did one thing for the environment, it would change it dramatically. And by not approving a glass building, you would improve the conditions dramatically, and also the wild grasses. By making part of our parks that you approve wild grass, it would certainly help. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, ma'am. Next speaker. And I know you sat through my previous warnings that to try not to repeat what the other speakers have said. We're excellent listeners here, and the front row's taking a lot of notes. So by all means, please go ahead.
I am Christine Etienne. I live at 65 Port Street, Unit 215. We in Port Credit really do enjoy the uniqueness of the size and height of our condo building. I will not repeat everything the ladies said on the first speakers. They were very good, mentioned everything that I would want to mention. But I really think a 6-story maximum bylaw, when this brown maple, whatever, investments asked for, has to be somehow considered honestly for the residents of Port Credit. We have a well-kept 6-story condominium situated beside Lake Ontario. We wish to preserve our location. This 9-story building is going to create a lot of overlook of views, sun, more shadows, etc. for 70, 80, 65 Port Street. I have attended 3 public meetings now. Most speakers were negative on all the proposals. Thank you for allowing me to express my views. May Council listen to the residents of the Port Credit area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, sir.
Hi, my name's Brad Taylor. I grew up in the Port Credit area. I currently live on Cumberland Drive. Spend a lot of time in Port Credit. I absolutely love what they're doing with that building. I think a 6-story building of adding on to ostensibly the regatta with something with a similar facade would just look akin to a train station when you're walking down the road. I think they've done a spectacular job. Like, I think everybody has to agree, we have to evolve in this world. I love that they've brought a modern tone to the tower, and they've also put some facade that matches the regatta. So it kind of uplifts, in my mind, the regatta and takes the complex on whole and moves it and makes it a renewed, kind of almost like a new complex and a new building overall. So I applaud what they've done to it. I think it'll be a great building. I think it's a great addition to the waterfront. And when you look at the rest of the waterfront plan, I think it'll be pretty spectacular in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else? Wrap her up.
Good evening. My name is Mauro Del Rosso. I live at 65 Port Street. And I do oppose these 9-story buildings because after I analyzed whatever the builder proposed, the whole thing is just an economical thing and nothing else. It does not improve our streets. To be fair, it's supposed to go against the rest of the street and apartments. The high-rise, let's call it high-rise that they propose, is for one reason only, is to expose more apartments of this proposed building to the lake, and therefore bringing in more revenue to the company, and at the same time damage the apartment next door to it. This is the only reason they did it, because they're not building, according to my knowledge, more square footage that they were allowed with the original plan. So why are you going through all this shebang, including it says that people from a mile from up the streets, they improve their view of the lake? That's untrue. That is untrue. On drawings, they can show whatever they want, but that does not work like that. So the thing is, they put the council, they put the area, they put the residents of the area through all this process just for money, nothing else, nothing else. They do not bring improvement to the area. They do not. They should have built according to it is, and even if I disagree for people coming here that I live at Cumberland Street, you live at Cumberland Street, we live on 65 Port Street. People live at 70 Port Street. 80 Port Street. We're supposed to want that we would say the building is fine or the building is not fine. And again, my end recommendation is not to allow such a thing just for economical purposes and nothing else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And I saw a couple other people. Who's next? Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Mayor, and councillors. My name's Craig Petty. I'm from 70 Port Street. I've made a number of written submissions to council members and staff. I won't make a long statement, but first of all, I want to thank Mr. Farrow, who's an extreme professional in the way he's handled things, so I commend you. I'd like to commend FRAM for their professionalism in engaging the city and doing the right thing about doing their best to meet the requests of the residents. And most of all, Mr. Dasko, Councillor Dasko, for encouraging the engagement that is required of these big decisions. So thank you to everybody. Jim Tovey was a very good friend of Port Street. And he had a vision. We are seeing it now. We're seeing it fulfilled. And I would propose to the committee that it was his vision, but a decision here will be your legacy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And this gentleman here, I think, will be next. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Your Worship, the Mayor, councillors, and neighbors. File number 02-18-007W, and this is our public meeting, and it's re-55 Port Street East that I want to address. My name is James Chestnut, and my wife and I live at 65 Port Street East, condo 304. Now, this will be my third time that I've appeared before the Planning and Development Committee or one of the public meetings. Now, I'm not going to rehash my earlier comments, but say I'm very disappointed in the Planning Department's recommendation to approve a 9-story building plus, on top of that, an HVAC, which in effect means that it's a 10-story building. Now, Mississauga's official plan only allows for a 6-story condo, and I'm asking the Planning Committee to not approve any development applications in the broad area that stretches from Lake Ontario to Lakeshore Road until City Hall and its council has time to assess the city land use policies and develop a new official plan for the waterfront of Port Credit. This is similar to what Burlington City Council has undertaken. If you have a steel and glass tower everywhere in the downtown waterfront of Port Credit, you lose the sun, you lose that feeling that we have in Port Credit, where people know each other. In Toronto's official plan, an amendment was made that development must be consistent with buildings nearby. The condo plan for 55 Port Street is not consistent with 70 Port Street, 65 Port Street. This tower at 55 Port Street will not fit in to the eclectic mix along Port Street. City Council will have to approve applications of all size of condos along the waterfront. And that's why I'm asking City Council and the Planning Committee to not approve this application until such time as a new official plan for Port Credit's waterfront has been developed. All parties need to know where they stand. The developers, the condo owners, the people that intend to buy a condo, the visitors from the waterfront want to know what they're buying beforehand. So City Council must show leadership with a new vision that has to be developed using an official plan for Port Credit. This will allow us all to know where we stand. We can't just have various proposals come before us without knowing where we stand. We need development in Port Credit. We need development that will take us up to the GO train or down from the GO train. I'm talking about just that piece of land that stretches up to Lakeshore. I'm asking you seriously to consider revising the official plan so that we know where we stand. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to say these few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chestnut. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? I know we're saving one speaker to the end.
Hi, my name is Louis Carnavelli. I live in the Mineola area. I had written a few things, but after listening to some of the people here, I'm going to change my thinking here. All the reasons that people are against this building are the reasons why you have to allow it. There are those of us that live in Mineola. I've been there 10 years. I've lived in Mississauga 40. I run my business out of Streetsville. The waterfront is a very special place in any city. And if we don't develop it, those of us that want to stay on the water are going to go elsewhere. Those of us that want to live in Port Credit, that want to walk to the restaurants, that want to walk to the shops, those of us that become empty nesters in a few years, we need places to live on the water. I currently have a unit in NOLA, never been a condo person. We have the top floor, the views are spectacular. And that's why we want you to build more units like that on the water. It's spectacular lifestyle. Can't get it in another home that I have somewhere else. Living in a condo with a view is spectacular. I'll get my wife to agree in a couple years, but for now, we want more units like that built. There are those that have experienced it. Great. They've enjoyed it. Their units have gone up in value. We have a waterfront now that should be developed. So the rest of us, and there's a lot of us in Port Credit, there's a lot of us in the area that want to stay and live on the water as we get older. 10 years ago, maybe not, but now we're getting to that point as empty nesters, we want to. So for all the reasons everyone here has said not to, they can't be selfish. Let the rest of us get an opportunity to live on the water in these beautiful buildings, and it is a beautiful building. I'm not sure why we're stopping it at 9. Build the damn thing and we will come and we will live in it. We will bring money to Port Credit. We will prosper. We spend more time in Port Credit now than we do in Toronto. My kids do. So at the end of the day, I'm in favor of the building. I'm in NOLA, but at the end of the day, I'm not guaranteed no one's going to build in front of me. The only way to do that is be on the water. I want a place on the water that no one's going to build in front of me and guarantee that. So please allow it built and build many more. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lou. Okay. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is John Pappas. I'm the owner of the Crooked Q. I'm also a member of the BIA board, and I support this application because I think it's a step in the right direction for the future of Port Credit. Let's not get stuck in the past with old ideas that stunt the creativity and possibilities of the future of what Port Credit can achieve. The official plan puts height limit cap on most of the existing buildings in Port Credit. I think this is a mistake. It's like saying to your child, your parents were 5'7", which I am. Therefore, you're not allowed to grow taller than that because you live in Port Credit. You can grow taller if you move somewhere else. Look at the Port's Hotel. It is capped by the official plan at 6 stories. This is a mistake. The plan stifles the possibilities for improving that building and many others like it in Port Credit. This building that is proposed at 55 Port Street is a great step to lead the future of Port Credit, a new standard of excellence in quality and design. It's a great step forward for the brand of our community that says, we welcome new people, great ideas, and investment. I ask you to support the Fram family in this application because they have brought so much to Port Credit in the past and are willing to lead us into the future. Thank you.
John, there's a question for you. The mayor would like to ask a question. Okay.
A second there. Hey, John, so you said you were a member of TOPCA or the BIA?
No, sorry, I'm on the board of the BIA.
You're on board of the BIA,
Yeah.
but you're not speaking on behalf of the BIA.
No, I'm not speaking. I'm just saying I'm involved in the community.
What's the position of the BIA and TOPCA, do you know? Can anyone tell me, by the way?
I think
Councillor
they
Daskal,
support
do you
it, but I can't say. I can't say.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Through the chair, I'd like to say that the BIA has not taken an official position that I do know of, and I happen to be also on the board of the BIA, so there is no official position there. TOPCA as well has given a deputation, and as well they sent in a presentation. With that, they see merits of both sides, quite frankly. So.
Not on? I was under the understanding that both were in support.
There we go. I have not heard, again, an official position from the BIA. The deputation and the presentation from TOPCA, I would say, is probably leaning towards support, but there's no official, clear vote from them that I have seen.
Okay, I think we had the first speaker wanted a chance to wrap up. We've heard a few from pros and cons, so I'm really trying to wrap her up here, but I'm not going to be successful, I can see. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Ala Shamas. I live in Port Credit as well as I work in Port Credit. Funny enough, when my clients asked me where I live, I said to them, I live in NOLA. They asked me, where is that? I go, that big, long tower. Where is that tower? They drive by it all the time, and no one sees that very long tower. Besides that, I was going to say, I basically compare that building, how condensed it is, how I look at it as a Kleenex box. If I put that building as a Kleenex box, the same building, if I lay it flat, I put that building up. It's basically the exact same building, but with a little bit of height. That building would look a lot more attractive. There's a lot of landscape around that building that way when people can look, they actually can see the lake as they're walking around Port Street. And I just wanted to be different and say that I had to compare it as a Kleenex box. This way, it's the same amount of napkins in that Kleenex box, but yet, funny enough, it's doing the same effect. So back to what I was saying with the height, You know, I service about 1,500 people in Port Credit, and a lot of people from Burlington and a lot of people from Oakville and all over. And it's so funny how I wait for the answer when I ask them, yeah, so I am in NOLA. Where is NOLA? No one knows where NOLA is. I tell them that long tower, as soon as you walk out from One here in Ontario, you see a long white tower. So I think it's, you know, we have a lot more things to worry about than having a 9-story height because of traffic. Now, traffic, if anyone goes around and goes at 8 o'clock in the morning and someone has a flat tire in Port Credit, Lakeshore is shut down because someone has a flat tire. This is not because an extra 3-story. This is because of a flat tire. So anyways, I'll leave you guys be, and we have something to think about. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. You're not an architect, are you?
Sorry?
You're not an architect, are you?
No, I build texture of hair. So I am a
You're an architect? Well, that's good.
Vidal Sassoon was an architect, and he dropped out to become a hairstylist.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'm just thinking all the architects in Mississauga are going to faint when they hear your description of Kleenex box.
Well, it's not. You got to think outside the box, my friend.
But that's okay. That's a very good description. You made our night. Thanks. Yeah, and the next gentleman, please.
I'll be very brief. Rod Mail, 45 Oakwood Avenue South. With respect to Topka and the BIA, I think having been involved in the community long enough, and of course you knowing how outspoken Topka is, if Topka was against this building, it would be very clear that they were against this building. The fact that they have not stepped forward to say they're against the building, take it the way you want. But I think we know when Topka is against a building, and they have not made that clear. And the fact the BIA has not spoken against it, I think, speaks for itself. I don't see why the BIA would be against it, given it's adding density to the area and more people to use the shops, et cetera, et cetera. I was going to speak briefly about what the previous gentleman did, is that we have to understand the point of why this building is 9 stories. It's not just because the developer pulled this out of the hat. It is slenderer and taller, as Carolyn Parrish pointed out earlier in the night about another development, because it makes sense. It adds sight lines, it adds views, it adds architectural texture to the building, as opposed to a flat building or a flatter building that's spread out over the site, takes up more landscaping, et cetera, et cetera. That's the whole point. That's why this building is 9 stories, and that's why the developer has taken the time and effort to design a building that's 9, previously 10 stories, rather than taking up the whole footprint of the site. So let's keep that in mind. Carolyn Parrish's point earlier tonight about the other towers was very clear, and I think that applies 100% to this building. So I'm 100% in support of it, and hope you vote for it tonight. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Welcome, madam.
Hi, I'm Irene Ochar. I work at 125 Lakeshore. I support this. I would like to address all the neighbors, the immediate neighbors. I understand and appreciate their concern because change is difficult for a lot of people. But I want to point out that they're living in buildings that Fram built. And 20 years ago, Fram was fighting for them to be living in the buildings they're living in today. And the official plans and all the different changes, they do happen and they evolve for a reason, because our city is growing and we have to adapt. The other thing I'd like to point out is Port Credit is not a spot somewhere in the suburbs. It is, and it belongs to the city of Mississauga. Everybody goes down there. It is not just the not in my backyard neighbors you have to listen to. You have to listen to and understand that the decisions you are making today are for the city of Mississauga and all the tourism we're getting in, and the prestige of having a beautiful waterfront. Having a narrow, tall building is far better than having this flat, long thing that obstructs the views of our beautiful waterfront. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe that first speaker could come back up, because I think we've got a good. please come on. We've had a good sample pro and con. This is a tough one. You got people love it, people hate it. So
I guess
bring it home
again.
for us,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, member of committee. I'm Fred Serafiro. I'm Vice President of Development of Fram Building Group. I've been involved with Port Credit since we purchased the site from St. Lawrence Starch years ago. So the key word, we heard a lot of really, really interesting comments, a lot of feelings, a lot of emotion about the site. One key word that stuck with me perhaps was the last speaker when they talked about evolution. And so, yes, I just want to touch upon two things for you tonight. These are facts. These are coming straight up from the Planning Department report. And one of them is, I want to speak to you about neighborhood context. Obviously, some of the residents feel strong about the height and density, but evolution is a key word. Yes, it was approved as a 6-story building. That, to my recollection, goes back to mid-1990, so over 30 years ago. And things have changed in Port Credit, and things have changed on this particular street, on Port Street. The Northfield store was approved 4 years ago at 10-story, albeit stepping down to 6. Obviously, there was the work that went into the marina land, the One Port Street land, where lots of community consultation, and at the end of the day, an official plan amendment 65 was passed by council last fall. And as we saw on the map, there are 3 buildings, I believe, a 10-story height, basically a block down the street, that could be built. They have official plan amendment status, so we'll see what happens in the next few years. And over and above that, the City of Mississauga, through its amendment to the official plan in 2012, has actually changed the designation on the north side of Port Street to allow 10-story building. So evolutions happen. We took inspiration from these changes to propose initially a 10-story building. We thought they would fit in with what is happening on Port Street and what is happening in Mississauga. And the fact that obviously Port Credit is a community node. This side is less than 500 meters to the GO train station. And so we looked at, similar to what one of the gentlemen said, rather than stick to the 6-story as a right, which would block the views of the other building beside it. So be it 65 or 60 or any other 3 condos that we built beside us, 6-story and 6-story, there would be no views. So rather than block the views for these residents and some of the visitors, we took the building, we slimmed it down, allow more views through it, and had some height. We think the height is modest. The density is a slight increase from 2.5 to 2.8. And as we know, there's very little traffic and shadow impact. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Great point. Thanks very much. All right, I'm going to, sorry, there's a question for you from Councillor Perry.
Sorry, just a quick question. I heard somebody say there was a deal made and you just knocked off 1 story to make people happy. Was it that, or was it that 45-degree angle thing to the next building? Truth.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I forgot to thank Councillor Dasco for all the work he's done over the last 2 years to the various community meeting and planning staff. We spent a lot of time with the planning staff revising the application. Yes, the reduction of 1 story helped facilitate the 45 degrees plane, and also the increased setback of the tower with respect to the podium help improve the zoning and the character.
So it wasn't just a deal, let's take a floor off and make people happy?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no. When planning staff deal with developers, we're always trying to improve the ultimate product that's being brought forward ultimately to council. And this was a iterative process between city's urban design staff and the development team.
Thank you. I took a chance. I've always told people don't ask the question unless you know the answer, but I didn't know the answer, but you came through it just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mayor?
Yeah. So just a question of staff as well. So on the Kleenex box that we are putting lengthways instead of vertically rather than horizontally, is the FSI changes slightly but not overall, right? There's no impact or minimal impact to the total FSI, so you're not looking at a lot more density, a lot more people there. It's just they're changing the shape of the building, basically.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a 0.3 FSI increase, so there is more floor space that's being proposed under the building compared to the 6-story building, but it's marginal. It's marginal. And there are unit caps in the zoning, and it's 10 additional units are being proposed by this project.
Correct. And the other point that was raised earlier was the fact that it was a glass building, but we have no ability to direct the kind of materials that are used in any case. We've heard glass building a couple of times. So if we said to them, no, we want stone building, we don't have the ability to do that anyways, correct?
No, we don't have ability to deal with architectural control. It is a bit of a combination. I don't know, I wouldn't characterize this as a curtain glass building. There is a breakup in materiality on the south side of the building. Also through site plan approval, the city can take a closer look at detailed design, and among that would be bird-friendly features like frittered glass, which are dealt to deal with these sorts of issues. Yeah.
Bird-friendly features, the resident will like that. And then No Frills building behind it, just to the north, is 10 stories?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Dasco.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to put out, I guess just before I speak to this, just with regards to, there was a question with regards to the official plan of the city, and if I could just put this to the Commissioner of Planning, put this in context as to, in terms of the process, how this works, when an application goes forward that, can this wait for the official plan? How does this work with regards to the official plan, just to let everybody know in terms of the process of how this all works?
Through the chair to the councillor. So Port Credit actually had a local area plan completed. I believe it was in 2014, so it's pretty recent. Lakeview, the other side, also had a local area plan. So we wouldn't be necessarily prioritizing those as areas, given that it has been as recent as that. In terms of application, you really can't stop something in process just to begin a new planning process. So anything that's in process would be judged on the policy set of the day. So even if we were to start a new project and say 3 years out we have a new official plan, the application would still be judged on what exists that day.
And there are provincial timelines in place as well, are there not?
Yes, there's very strict timelines around all the planning things that we do, yeah.
Thank you. So if I could, this is really one of the toughest files I've come into. I must say, during the election campaign, which is almost a year ago today, I mean, we're just I guess a little ways off here. I recall sitting down with folks in the community and going through, having it explained to me, the importance of keeping things at 6 stories. So I certainly took that to heart. And as I think a lot of folks know, I've spent a lot of time talking with the community. I've also spent a lot of time with staff and Fram, who's I guess got Brown Maple Investments on this particular file. I certainly understand both sides. I certainly get what happens if you kind of look to take that 6-story building and mush it up, so you take it up higher and get those view corridors going. And I also know that this one is right on our waterfront, and there's also some other plans at 1 Port Street, which were approved kind of in principle about 4 years ago, along with the No Frills site as well. I've taken all that into consideration for sure, and I understand those that do speak and like the slimmer, higher version, but certainly those that have spoken to keeping things at 6 stories. I gave my word that I would stick to 6, and I am going to stick with 6. So I just wanted to let that be known. Thank you very much for the time.
All right, Councillor Parrish.
Yes, I'm going to support the plan before us. For the second week in a row, I'm supporting what our planning staff has recommended. Although everybody around this table supported an 18-story building in the middle of acres of 2-story buildings. So the people in Port Credit aren't suffering too badly by 10 extra units. I think the arguments that have been made are excellent. I think that staff did a great job. And I think the building's going to be gorgeous. So I'm happy to support it. I just find it interesting how people vote on these things. I'm going to try really hard to support you guys every time now, because maybe you'll be nice to me when I want a few tall buildings. I'm the tall building queen. I love tall buildings. And 9 stories isn't exactly, or what is this one? 9 isn't exactly tall. It's well placed where it is. And it'll be filled very quickly with people who have tons of money to spend in Port Credit. So I'm going to support it because it's the right thing to do.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Anybody else, a comment or two? No? Then we need someone to move that motion. Maybe Councillor Parrish, you could move the recommendation, and we're going to vote on it right now. Okay. And that's carried 7-1. And okay. Okay. Sorry, 1, 2, 3. Did somebody get caught not voting? No? No? Okay, I guess they didn't vote. So it's passed nevertheless. Sorry. B. George? Okay. Well, I don't know.
Who was it?
It doesn't tell me. The machine doesn't snitch. Sorry. Okay, but it's passed just the same. And it's been Councillor Mahoney. You want to move adjournment? Thanks very much. It's approved. Thanks everyone for being here tonight, especially our professional staff who did a great job as usual. Thanks very much.